I'm Jackson. I live in around Augusta, Georgia. I live on the South Carolina side of Augusta, Georgia, which, if you're not familiar with with the geography, Augusta basically is up against the Savannah River, which if you cross the river, you're in South Carolina. If you're across the other side of the river, you're in Georgia. So when I say Augusta, Georgia, that's just like the major metro that I'm in. I live on the South Carolina side. I do stuff on both sides of the river. I have some stuff I've done in Atlanta. I have stuff that I've done in Columbia, Savannah. Augusta is really just, for me, it's like a really great place to be as an investor because I'm like 2.5 hours from like 6 major metro areas. Like 2.5 hours or less. And so it's a great place for me to be as like an active investor because I can take a day trip to go visit properties in Atlanta, Savannah, Asheville, Columbia, etc. Right. So I really like being here. Most recently, like I've been buying like 2 to 3 houses a month, mostly in the Augusta area. And that's been like all year, using a combination of hard money and private money. Mostly as like quote unquote cash deals, using lenders, but cash as it gets written on the purchase agreement. I've bought sub twos, I've bought on seller finance. I'm a little exhausted on those because they're cool and exotic, but then they lock your capital up for like pretty much forever. And so if it's not like something where you get like a killer deal with killer cash flow, or you don't need like tax benefits, I personally am not really looking for buying them at this time. Right now, I'm mostly buying either mortgage methods that produce cash at closing, and I'm buying single family like fix and flip type homes. Now, my buy box and the way I kind of like underwrite my properties as like before I buy them is I basically look for kind of 3 things. Most of the time, the ARV is going to be between 180 and 225. And the reason for that is when I go refinance with the DSCR loan, if I have to, or if I plan to, 80% of 180 to 225 is going to carry a payment of between $1,400 to, let's say, like $1,700. In Augusta, that number cash flows as a rental. And so even if I'm buying it as a fix and flip with the primary strategy being to sell, I'm still buying it with the knowledge that like, hey, market has been kind of rough this year. I've had properties that didn't pan out as flips and I had to refinance. And so around, I want to say kind of April of this year, I actually changed my buy box to be only things that will break even as a long-term rental, even if my plan is to sell them. And so that's my buy box kind of across the board. Obviously there's exceptions. I bought one 2 months ago that is going to do really well as a short-term rental based on its location. It's like a mile from the Masters golf course, where the Masters golf tournament is. And so that one won't break even as a long-term rental, but it'll kill as a short-term rental.
Sure.
And so I bought it as a flip. I'm not going to list it until May. It's done, but I'm not going to list it until after the golf tournament so I can make all my money. So that's kind of how I run my buy box right now is, I've been beat up enough times on deals that should have been great flips. The comps were there, the pictures were good, but it was like no walkthroughs, no offers. It was really weird. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to be able to not just bleed out on properties. And so I changed my buy box to basically say, hey, I'm buying it with an ARV between kind of 180 to 225, because I know for a fact that if I refinance that into a DSCR loan at 80% loan to value, my 70-ish% of the 180 to 225 is going to get paid off, and I'll be breaking even as a long-term rental pretty quickly. I've got a really solid property manager here in Augusta, and I've got a great one in like Fayetteville, North Carolina as well, which is where I have a bunch of rentals also. And I mean, they fill my rentals within usually like 3 weeks of listing. And so it's not something where I'm like concerned about finding a tenant. It's just a matter of, hey, I put this on market. If I haven't received any offers in like 45 days, I'm not really interested in waiting longer. to just change exit strategies. I'll like if it's been 45 days and if I have a lot of like walkthroughs and no offers, that's one thing. But if I'm kind of low on walkthroughs, there's no holidays, we haven't really gotten any like realistic offers, then it's like, hey, I can sit on this for 2 years and try again. You know, in 2 years I'll just resell it. So I'm going to refinance as a DSCR right now to get ahead of that. So I'm not just like sitting there with a vacant house for 2 extra months.
Excellent. I think I kind of mentioned this a little bit too, but our, just from the minimal kind of deals that we've been able to work through, because we've only been able to with the amount of funding we have, kind of do one deal at a time. So we have some experience with gap funding and with EMD and with Gator lending. And so we were actually chatting this morning about how, we've listened to some of Pace's videos on the Morby method, but we like in practice haven't been through it start to finish. And so kind of what has kind of brought you to do that over the seller finance, aside from maybe just the quicker turnaround, I suppose?
Yeah, so I wouldn't even say it's a quicker turnaround. I actually think Morby methods are really cool, and I think they're a little bit underutilized as a fix and flip acquisition strategy. That I can go off on like a tangent about like why I think that's awesome. But the reason I like Morby methods, the way that the community, I personally think that the Morby method is the number one acquisition strategy that the community, like sub-2 community, gated community, etc., had to come together and figure out how to do it without a lot of instruction. Seller finance, like most title companies can handle a seller finance transaction without much help. Sub-2, there's a lot of instruction about doing sub-2, right? There's a ton of instruction about doing sub-2. There's not a lot of instruction in the Kajabi Vault or anywhere else about like doing a Morby method. And so it's something the community at large kind of wanted to figure out. And basically it was just a bunch of TCs and a bunch of gators and a bunch of operators going out and getting these things under contract and trying to figure out how to do them correctly in ways that like aren't violating like laws and stuff like that, because you're very borderline committing fraud sometimes if you don't do it right.
Right.
I draw my pen. So the reason I like Morby methods is they are low capital input and have the potential to cash out at closing. And so the risk to earnest money, for example, is a lot lower, in my opinion, is a lot lower on a Morby method, because if you get it to close, as long as your loan to value is kind of where you expected it to be, you can manipulate it so that, or you can negotiate it rather, so that you're actually receiving money back at closing, which includes your earnest money and your down payment and your closing costs and a bunch of extra. And so that's why I like Morby methods. It's basically like you can get into it with zero money out of pocket. It's a way to kind of, if you're breaking even as a long-term rental or whatever your exit strategy is on that property, you can basically reinvest the money that you've borrowed for it to do another one. I can take, I have a fourplex that I'm closing on in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I was direct to seller. It's a Morby method. I have a fourplex that is going to cash out about 40K at closing. I can take that 40K and go buy a fix and flip. And I borrowed that 40K and I'm paying like 7% annualized on that 40K. I can go do a fix and flip with that 40K and make another 40K on the flip. And then now I have 80K and I basically got both those houses for free, free. And so for me, it's kind of a way it kind of multiplies the available capital and allows you to, it's a really good scalability tool. I wouldn't say you should build an entire portfolio on them, just because at the end of the day, they are over leveraged if you do that, right? And a lot of these Morby methods, you cannot sell for like 7 years because there's just too much debt on them, right?
Right.
Unless you like to negotiate the debt down or something, but you realistically can't sell them for 7 years, even if you tried. And so for me, it's like, okay, what is the intent? Like, one, want to make sure that I'm breaking even as a rental, or that if I'm losing money as a rental, it's worth it, right? I talked to somebody about this last night. If I'm getting $100,000 at closing, I can be okay with losing a couple $100s a month because, in like 3 years, that a couple $100s a month be breaking even, and I've made, presumably, you know, if I'm smart, I've made that 100K turn into a lot more than whatever I lost over the. So it's definitely a risk analysis, and you kind of have to approach each deal as like the buyer. You have to approach it as like, what are you actually using the leverage for? Because you don't have to over leverage it. If you get the seller to carry 40 and you get a DSCR loan for 70, that 10% covers like closing costs, you're only a little bit over leveraged. You can sell that in 5 years. If you get the seller to carry 40 and you get an 80% loan to value loan, now you have like a 15%, 10 to 15% overage, which is great. But what are you going to do with it? So really, it's just a matter of like, what's your plan for the excess? But that's, I really like mortgage methods because they're scalable. They are as a tool, they're scalable as a tool, and it allows you to basically multiply your efforts of like, if I want to have X number of doors in 5 years, my limit is basically how many mortgage methods can I cash out of to go buy more doors. So that's kind of like kind of just the idea of it.
Yeah. So where would you see us potentially being able to support kind of your plans for 2026?
Sure. So I learned a lot in 2025. I learned a lot in 2024. 2026, I'm super confident in my buy box. The limit that, you know, the left and right limbs I put on my buy box. I'm super confident in the teams that I put together, where I'm doing flips and doing renovations. I have a goal this year of, I want to gross, or not gross. It's hard to say how much you gross on a flip because like technically I gross the entire sale price.
Sure.
I would like to have like a seller net sheet of all my flips that adds up to $1 million, and that really comes out to like averages out to be like 25 flips. Now that's aside from like mortgage methods. That's aside from if I do any wholesale deals or whatever. I don't do a lot of wholesaling, but you know, every now and then you pick one up and I'm just like, I'll sell this to somebody else. But aside from that, I think it'd be really cool to have a net sheet of about $1 million from flips. That I am like the primary owner of, because I have a portfolio that I just closed on a couple of weeks ago. It's 23 single family homes, and that's in Aiken, South Carolina, which is just like 20 minutes north of me. And I have like a bunch of partners on that one because it was, you know, big purchase.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I get to say that I flipped 23 houses when I'm done with it, right? But the $1 million net sheet on that one is not mine. It's ours as a whole, right? So I would love to have like a net sheet of like $1 million. And obviously that doesn't mean I have $1 million in my bank account at the end of the year, but that's just the way things are. It kind of should be 25 to like 35 flips basically completed, depending on like the size of them. That would be my like fix and flip goal. And then mortgage methods, you know, like I said, I'm using mortgage methods primarily as a way to accelerate my cash growth. And so when it comes to mortgage methods, what I'm running into often is the earnest money going hard and sellers not having signed a mutual release, especially on like the larger or more like commercial type deals where the sellers are usually a little bit more savvy. They're not really open to a pre-signed mutual release, you know, stuff like that. And so what I've been working on is I want to develop a relationship with EMD lenders, maybe with you guys, where there's basically like a deed of trust on 1 or 2 of my properties that I keep in my portfolio that has equity in it, like low interest rate first position that I can't ever get rid of anyways, because why would you throw away 3%? And then the plan is basically, if we have like a deed of trust that sits on that property in its second position with its equity, and basically we use that as the security for earnest money that does go hard, or that the seller is not signing a mutual release for, right? And so the way it would kind of work in practice is I have a house at 751 Galloway Drive. It's worth $250. I owe $150 on it. Realistically, like you can comfortably put a $30K loan on it and have equity to cover yourself, right? So let's say I need 30K of EMD. You can lend me the 30K. You have the deed of trust already on there. When I go pay back the 30K, we just don't cancel the deed of trust. So you always have that security, even if it's only for a $1 loan. When it comes to like, if I ever do sell or refinance that house, the payoff is $1. But if you have EMD out with me, the payoff is 30K or whatever it is, right? And so it's a way to, if we never cancel the security deed or the mortgage or the deed of trust, whatever it is, depending on what state you're in, if you never cancel that, then you're always secured for whatever amount you've basically lent out or brought back in. That's pretty much how HELOCs work, right? So almost like an EMD line of credit, if you will. Which actually that's cool. That's my word now. It's an EMD HELOC that it's like, hey, Megan, I have a RV park. I need $19,000 for earnest money on it. It goes hard in about 3 weeks after we get the appraisal back, and it closes a week later. Can I borrow the earnest money and you secure it against this property? And when I close, it's a mortgage method. When I close, I can pay off the EMD plus the EMD return from the closing, and then we just we leave the deed of trust there for the next one. And that way you stay secured for any money that is like lent out as earnest money. If there's a deal that needs 50K earnest money, it's like, here's another property for collateral. We put a deed of trust on it, do the whole title search and everything. Now you have 2 deeds of trust to secure up to 50K or 60K. I haven't done any that need 50K earnest money, but just as like how it would look on a scale, right?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Timeline for kind of just projection. Obviously, you can't predict the market, or we'd all be a lot richer. But from EMD to that closing, what typically is sort of that timeline for you? And if you have what is your average interest rate for your PMLs?
Sure. So for PMLs and for EMD, it's a little different, and because we're talking about we're treating kind of what I just described is going to be something also different. It's like EMD, but it's also PML. So it's like what we're doing. For PMLs, I'm leaning more towards either full first positions at 10% flat or second positions of like 15% flat with cross collateral. So you're on the subject property and you're also on another property. So kind of double the collateral, so it's safer. And then, safer, as safe as it can be, right? And then kind of a 15% flat return on that. Okay. Typically that's a 6-month hold. If you allow like 2 months for reno for a good like 60K reno, takes about 2 months. And then 2 months on the market, and then 2 months to refi. Not that any of those things necessarily has to take 2 months. You can do a 60K reno in 45 and you can refi in 30. But one of the things I've had to learn this year is that a 30-day refi does not always take 30 days. And that sucks. Yeah. I just had one that we closed a refi 78 days after we got the appraisal back. And I have never seen that before. And I will never use that lender again. But that like crushed some relationships for me. Yeah. It was painful and I hate that. So, you build in as much time as you like feasibly can, as you can predict. But, that's why it kind of says like, if it's been 45 days and I haven't had any bites, like I've already started the refi process. I just haven't ordered the appraisal. Right. So when it comes to like, hey, we're at 45 days on market and there's no offers, we're not in a contract, like nothing really solid moving, I'm ordering the appraisal on day 45 so that I can be ahead of that game. And I've also, like I have lenders that I've like seen perform in 30 days. So it's kind of one of those things where this year was like a lot of testing out relationships, and, sometimes you test out a new relationship and it doesn't work out. And that's kind of what happened there. But I have lenders that I've seen like go from, I had a property I closed on in October, and by mid-November, I had clear to close from the refi lender at 80% loan to value. So I'm solid on my refi lenders at this point. And so PML, typically the expectation is like, a maximum of 6 months, a realistic maximum. there's like the default rate that gets built into the note and late fees that get built into the note for like, stuff happens, and that's just real estate. But typically 6 months, 15% flat. You have cross collateral on 2 properties. You can use your own TC. I have a TC that I've been training on like everything I do. He has done PML with me before, as a PML. So like he has lent me money, and TC'd his own stuff. But there's no pressure to use him if obviously you should get your own TC. But yeah, so that's PML. And then for EMD, I'm perfectly comfortable with like 20 to 25% on earnest money. If we're collateralizing it on a like, I don't want to say it like decreases, but I would say like, it goes from like 30 days to 90 days. Because if it's a 30-day EMD deal, like, hey, earnest money in, 30 days later we close on the Morby method, even if it's collateralized, if for some reason the EMD goes hard and it doesn't close because things happen, I now need time to go refi, right? So instead of 20% for 30 days for earnest money, it's now 20% for like 30 days for me to refi the collateral and get your money out, basically that way.
Sure.
But that would obviously be like the next step is like, oh, we're not going to close this. Okay, let me just go refi my property that I put aside as collateral for this purpose, right?
Awesome. And we've had some experiences where it was written in that for the initial chunk of time it was at a certain percent, and then after so many days it's a different percent, and then if it extends past 6 months, sure, there's an additional fee. So we're comfortable with that. We're also not rushed. I think our last deal extended 5 extra months. Yeah, we had 2 extensions added to it, so we're very flexible.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a couple right now that we're like working on closing, some like commercial mortgage methods that are, I think we're on our like 5th month of trying to get these closed, and they're not like, it's not RV parks, it's not mobile home parks, it's like a warehouse and like a apartment slash like mixed use kind of property. Those are I think those are just harder in general to finance, and that's why they've took so long. But yeah, in general, and I'm glad you're flexible. I think a lot of people, if they haven't had to be flexible, they don't realize how uncomfortable they are with being flexible. And if you've had to be flexible, I'm sorry, but I'm glad that you are. Because I mean, what we learn as we go through deals is that things happen sometimes, and like things can happen regardless of like everybody's best intentions. And so the real test for us as investors, lenders, whatever we're doing, right? Because I lend out money, I've been PMP for people, etc. Credit sponsor. What we learn is basically what are we ready to accept as like, hey, things happened that were outside of people's control. Are we ready to like pivot to what we need to do, right? And that's why, I mean, my buy box has that built in, right? So like being able to pivot from selling to refinancing like on a dime, that was intentional, so that I know, hey, I have a secondary exit strategy. So I think that's awesome for you guys. And obviously, I mean, communication wise, the main thing is communication. If something's going to go late, I'm going to communicate. It's like, hey, this is what's going on. This is, this, I'm actually working on an app that'll automate it a little bit. Where I'll go take pictures and then it'll upload it to a Google Drive and it'll send you a Google Drive link. Say, this is where we're at today. I'm working on that. It's coming along, but it'll be kind of like, for most of the time, my updates, once I get past the renovation phase, it's gonna be like every 2 weeks of like, hey, this is kind of where we're at. Like renovations are done, it's on market. You can watch it on market. If we get offers, I'll let you know. I'll be like, hey, this is the reason I'm countering. This is the reason I'm not accepting this offer. Like whatever, right? And then again, once we're kind of at like 45 days on market, depending on like where we're at with activity, offers, showings, I'll probably order the appraisal for the refinance at that point. And that'll be kind of like, hey, just so you know, I've changed the exit strategies to refinance. This is the expected loan amount at 80% loan to value. This is this is kind of where your combined loan to value currently sits, and this is how you get your money basically when I refi. So,
well, very cool. I mean, obviously, because our amount is as small as it is, we work with one person at a time. So we're two things. One, it's ready to go. So at any point in time, within the next, month or whatever, if something comes up and you're like, I need the money, like, just let us know. It's not going anywhere. But additionally, when we consider things going longer, that's really a benefit for us because the money just continues to work in our favor. Not that we want projects to go extra long. Like we want you to hit that 1 million net and and things like that. But
but they can go long, and I like. I have deals that have gone 45 days from like close to close, and I have deals that have gone like 9 months, right? Just because of things happening. And so, like, to be clear, I'm not a perfect person. They're all imperfect people. I will try my best to get
You're like, never mind.
days.
Delusional. No, that's
yes.
Okay. So yeah. Do you have any questions for us or anything that we can help you feel better or?
Sure. So, I mean, a couple questions. Where are you guys located at?
Oregon. So we live in Southern Oregon, which is terrible for real estate.
So I don't buy on the West Coast. So none of the projects that I buy are going to be geographically close to you guys. So like upfront, right? Now I don't know if you've ever had to go through a foreclosure process or what that looks like. When I talk about my deals, it's never like, what if I default? I always talk about what if I get hit by a car, because I have kind of like two things, right? It's like, I don't want to lose money and I don't want you to lose money. I don't want anybody to lose money. And if I get hit by a car, I don't want you to lose money. And so that's why, like, whenever I'm explaining like a deal structure, or if I'm saying like, hey, here's the 2 collateral properties, here's what they're worth and what they're owed, etc. I might over explain. You guys probably know things already, but like I'm gonna over explain, like, hey, this is, if I get hit by a car, you go talk to a foreclosure attorney and you take over this house. You go talk to a foreclosure attorney, you take over the other house because it's cross collateral, even if they're in different states or whatever, right? And so like I'm always gonna be like that. Georgia and North Carolina have non-judicial foreclosure. I know Georgia, I'm pretty sure about North Carolina. Non-judicial foreclosure. So the foreclosure process in those states is a lot faster than in other states like South Carolina, Florida. I don't know about Tennessee, Virginia, or Alabama, where I also have properties. I don't know what the foreclosure process is there. But Georgia and North Carolina, non-judicial. So you still go through like a foreclosure attorney to help you out because you're far away, but it's not like a 9-month process. It's like in Georgia, it's like a 60-day process. You advertise the auction in the newspaper for like 2 months and then you call it a day. And there's a lot of gators here in Georgia, especially in Atlanta. You're probably familiar with like Abraham Gray and Alexis Morgan.
Yeah.
They're based out of Atlanta. And I'm sure they know plenty of foreclosure attorneys to, if it ever, like, you can't get in touch with Jackson because he got hit by a car, like, I'm sure it won't be hard to find somebody to help you out.
Oh my gosh, I don't want to make that post in the group. Please don't do that.
Which I have like an experienced partner for and everything like that, but earnest money on those is due today, so I'm not gonna like say, hey, I need the earnest money today. I think I might miss them, but then that stuff
the bank is still open. We could probably
I would hate to ask you for that because that's not how I want our very first, like, no, I don't want our very first deal to be like, well, we met today, by the way.
If it was like,
it was 3 hours ago,
and like we were gonna just like knock it out of the park, we would make it happen. But
if we were having this conversation 3 hours ago, I'd ask.
For sure.
Because EMD moves like that. But
we've been sitting on our money for about a month now, I want to say. We got paid from our last deal, and then the gal that we usually work with, she has the fingers in lots of pots, sort of a thing. Reached out to her before the holidays, didn't reply, and so I don't know if she's traveling, I don't know if she's taking a break, what have you, but I got the itch, and I was like, let's see if somebody else needs our money. So yeah, but don't be afraid to ask, because we are, that's what it's in the bank for, is to be used.
Gotcha.
Real quick, how do you feel about partnering with people who are not part of Sub 2?
So I have learned to be afraid of that word partner, not because of what everybody thinks partner means, but what we don't think it means, and we find out quickly what it means. So I don't have an issue doing deals with people outside of sub 2, like no problems at all. It's more of like I like that word partner to be refined to like, because what'll happen is you guys will be my capital partner secured by a lien against a property as a lender, and I'll have like my wholesaler who's a partner who's bringing me the deal. He's getting an acquisition fee and he's out of the deal. And I'll have my contractor who's a partner who can talk to like tenants for me because he's got to go fix something inside the house or whatever. And he's my partner in a very limited capacity like that. What I have learned to be wary of is like joint ventures that are basically there's too many open, unforeseen what ifs that are impossible to think of ahead of time. And then you, like, if you haven't worked with that person before in a limited capacity, then you also don't know how they're going to work in an unlimited capacity, right? Like you can come up with like 8,000 joint venture clauses and et ceteras, but you never really come up with everything. And so like working with people outside of sub 2, whether they want to sell me a deal, bring me capital, they want to buy something from me, like cool, awesome. Let's start with like a limited capacity first. And then once we kind of know how we work together in a limited capacity, well, maybe we can expand that into a less limited capacity with a little bit more open end, but also, still having our roles in the deal, but in a way that's like shared ownership or something like that. I tend to, and this is like a safety thing for me, but also for them. I tend to recommend that people do lending instead of equity first, if they haven't done a deal before, because as a lender, and this is the reason I do it, for like loan sponsorships, I do everything with a note and a wraparound mortgage, because I don't really know how to kick somebody out of a LLC. Like assignment of shares, but at the end of the day, it's all judicial. But I do know how to foreclose pretty much wherever. I go to foreclosure attorney, I say they're in violation of the note terms, the wraparound note terms. And that's how I do all my loan sponsorships for credit and experience and stuff like that. I like, whether I'm on the LLC or not, however it has to happen, I get a wraparound mortgage and a wraparound note and an assignment of shares. I'm like, I have 8 different ways to take over the property, but at the end of the day, the only one I know for sure works is the wraparound mortgage. And that's why I kind of like recommend that people start with lending rather than being a equity partner of sorts, because at the end of it, I don't know if I get hit by a car. I don't know how you kick me out of the LLC.
Sure.
I don't know how to kick other people out of the LLC without going through like some weird process where it's like, well, what does the operating agreement say about kicking people out? Like, no idea. But I do know how to foreclose. So that is kind of like my broad scope opinion on partnering.
Perfect. It just reminds me that like there's so much like you can know a lot and still like miss a chunk of something, right? So connotatively, partnering, probably used a little too loosely there. The reason I ask, my sister and her husband just sold their business. They've only ever done like traditional bank loans, pay 20% down, and they have a decent portfolio, but they now have
like 20 houses.
Yeah. But every once in a while they're like, what's that sub 2 thing you guys do? But they're not willing to jump in, right? But they do like that every once in a while we're like, yeah, we've had this deal and we've made some money off of it. And they're like, how do we find those people? And so you mentioned the house with the tree in it. And I if you are open to it, I'd be happy to connect you guys too, just because they have a little bit more funds than we do currently.
Sure. Well, yeah. So, and thanks for clarifying what you meant by partner. And like that wasn't like me jumping at you. It was more like me, like let me be clear.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so if you have people that are interested in lending as like a general concept, and you want to introduce them, absolutely. Happy to have basically the same conversation with them. And if they're starting at a place of like lower kind of knowledge level, like you guys have done a couple of EMD deals, a couple of PML deals. If they haven't, and they're just like, hey, we've done lots of bank loans with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and it's like, well, cool. let me kind of walk you through like how lending works, and what I'll always underwrite the deal in front of you, but I might like underwrite a deal in front of them that I don't do with them, but just to show them how I underwrite.
Sure.
And so it's just it's just like an extra conversation, but you can probably tell I like talking about real estate. So if it means that I have to talk about real estate for an extra 30 minutes, then well,
Not bad.
dang it.
Like 30 minutes of work in like turning into, you know, X amount of capital, like it's probably going to be well worth your time. Better than flipping burgers.
For sure. So yeah, I mean, if you want to introduce them, I tend to offer cross collateral on deals that are second positions. On first positions, I don't always tend to. That being said, if it's like a comfort thing, we can come to like a lower, if we can come up with like a lower return for extra security, I'm happy with that, you know. As long as everything matches, right? I'm not going to quadruple collateralize your money for a 20% annualized return. But like if we're cool with like, hey, you're in first position on one and second position on another, and you're cool with like a 10% return in 6 months, I'm like, yeah, that's cool. But yeah, so happy to take the introduction. I'll always, you know, if you do introduce me, I'll be sure to go through you for any potential deals that I might bring them. I'm like, hey, Megan, by the way, I'm going to go talk to, let's say her name's Lindsay. I'm going to go talk to Lindsay about this deal, or I'll just ping the group chat that we have or something like that. Just because I like to make sure that people are involved, or at least informed on like what their introductions are still doing. I used to connect. I don't connect much anymore. I've learned not to like it very much. Just the lack of control over the borrowers. Like there's no way for me to influence it once it closes. But for me as a borrower, right? And I do my very best to act with transparency and integrity. So it's like, if you introduce me, absolutely, I'll like make sure you're involved. If she wants you to help with underwriting, I'll underwrite it in front of both you guys. You can, you know, pick and pull at like, hey, why are you doing it this way? Why are you doing it that way? Who your lender is, like whatever. Like I love these conversations. So
cool. Excellent. ¿Qué más?
I don't know.
Right. Andrew, I don't know if you noticed, Andrew listens. He's the behind the scenes. What are the terms? Integrator. Thank you. I always think extrovert, introvert. That's not what it is. But yeah, but he, if you know, when the wiring happens, when the DocuSigns happen, Andrew's the guy. I'm always like, did we do the thing? But yeah, wonderful. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. It's almost the holidays. But feel free to.
It's been the holidays.
Okay. Yep. It's almost New Year's. I don't know. I've got stuff that I got to get done this afternoon. And we met out at my mom's property, which is like an hour out of town. So we'll get wrapped up. But I appreciate you being able to chat with us so quickly. And again, feel free to reach out, either email or Facebook message, or I can send you my cell phone number as well, whatever communication works best for you.
Okay. Yeah. I'll shoot you my email and cell phone like right after we get off this office call. And then if you send me your email back, what I'll do is I have like a little credibility folder that has like all my LLC documents for all the LLCs that I use, my track record, a copy of my driver's license. It has like a bunch of stuff in it, so that you know you can look through it. You can check the HUDs that are in there. I need to update the HUDs, but you can check the public record stuff for the properties that are on my track record to see, like, you know, pull it off my privy. Hey, when did 546 Jackson Street sell into who, right? You can check my LLC docs to see that I was on it. So I'm like, and if there's any HUDs that you specifically want to say, it's like, hey, show me the HUD for the 23 pack. And I'm like, okay, well, here's the HUD for the purchase. And there'll be individual HUDs for each individual sale or refi or whatever. And we can kind of just work through as those happen. I haven't sold any of those yet. We closed on it like a month ago.
Sure.
But, you know, stuff like anything in the track record you want to see, happy to show it. And I'll have my ops manager / TC, Joe Hipsky, that I mentioned. He's the one who has also done PML with me. I'll have him CC'd on that email, so anything that you need to see, if I don't get to it, he'll send it your way. Because you know, like I said, transparency and integrity, like we're all grown-ups, and some people don't like to act like grown-ups. But at the end of the day, it's like if I do everything I can to make every deal go as smooth as possible, like I feel happy, you know. So that's me.
Awesome. Well, it was great talking to you.
Yeah, you too. You guys have a great New Year.
Thanks.
I'll send you all that stuff. I'll send you the brief on the 3 deals that I mentioned as well, in case you want to take a swing at any of them. And yeah, just looking forward to working with you guys.
Fantastic.
Great.
See you next year.
Yep. All right, talk soon.